In the middle of a crowded city hospital, under the harsh white lights of the emergency room, a black single father named Marcus held his little boy close, whispering soft words of comfort while the child's fever burned hotter by the minute. Elijah, only 8 years old, was struggling to breathe, his small chest rising and falling in painful gasps. Marcus had already waited 3 hours. He had no fancy insurance card, no expensive watch, and no last name that opened doors. All he had was a father's love and a quiet desperation that filled the air around him. When the doctor finally stepped into the curtained bay, looked at the pair, and shook his head, the words that followed cut deeper than any diagnosis. "I'm sorry. We can't treat him here tonight. You'll need to find another facility." Marcus felt the floor tilt beneath his feet. How could a hospital turn away a sick child? How could kindness disappear so completely in a place built to heal? If this story is already pulling at your heart the way it pulled at mine, please take a second to subscribe to Whispers of Heart 0.2, hit that like button, and leave a comment telling me where you're watching from. Your support helps these stories of everyday courage reach more people who need them. Marcus had raised Elijah alone ever since his wife passed 5 years earlier. He worked 2 jobs, day shifts loading trucks and night shifts cleaning office buildings, just to keep a roof over their heads and food on the table in their small apartment on the south side of Chicago. Elijah was a bright, gentle boy who loved drawing superheroes and reading comic books under the covers with a flashlight. Lately, though, the boy had grown weaker. A persistent cough turned into high fevers, and then came the terrifying moments when he could barely catch his breath. Marcus had taken him to free clinics before, but this time it felt different. This time the fear in Elijah's eyes told him they needed real help, and fast. That rainy Tuesday evening, Marcus carried his son through the automatic doors of St. Mary's Medical Center. The waiting room smelled of antiseptic and old coffee. Nurses moved quickly between patients. Marcus filled out the forms with a careful hand, explaining that he had basic coverage but not the premium plan many of the other families seemed to carry. When the doctor, a tall man in a crisp white coat named Dr. Harlan, finally appeared, his eyes flicked over Marcus's worn jacket and the boy's second-hand sneakers. He asked a few questions, listened briefly to Elijah's chest, then closed the chart with a soft but final snap. "This isn't the right place for ongoing care without the proper insurance verification," he said. "I recommend you try the county hospital across town." Marcus's voice cracked as he pleaded. "Please, doctor. He's my only child. He's struggling. I'll pay whatever I can. Just help him breathe easier tonight." Dr. Harlan shook his head once more and walked away, leaving the curtain open and the cold air rushing in. Marcus sat on the edge of the gurney, stroking Elijah's damp forehead. The boy looked up at him with trust that almost broke him. "It's okay, Dad," Elijah whispered. "You're here." Those 3 words somehow steadied Marcus. Even in the middle of rejection, he refused to let bitterness take root. While they waited for a ride that might never come, a young mother across the aisle began to cry. Her toddler had fallen and cut his forehead, and she had no one to watch her other child in the lobby. Without hesitation, Marcus offered to hold the sleeping baby while she spoke with the triage nurse. He rocked the little one gently, humming the same soft tune he used with Elijah on hard nights. The mother later thanked him with tears in her eyes. A janitor who had overheard the earlier conversation brought Marcus a cup of water and a warm blanket for Elijah. Small acts, quiet ones, but they kept the darkness from swallowing the room. Hours passed. Elijah's breathing grew more labored. Marcus was preparing to carry his son back out into the rain when a different voice cut through the hallway. A group of people in business suits and hospital badges approached, members of the hospital board who had been in a late meeting upstairs. One of them, an older woman with silver hair and kind eyes, stopped short when she saw Marcus. Recognition flickered across her face. Years earlier, during a winter storm, her own grandson had been stranded after a car accident on a dark stretch of road. A stranger had stopped, wrapped the boy in his own coat, and stayed with him until help arrived. That stranger had never given his name, but the description had stayed with her, a tall black man with a gentle voice who worked nights and refused any reward. Now she looked at Marcus holding his own sick child and understood. The board members gathered around the curtained bay. The silver-haired woman spoke first, her voice firm. "This child needs immediate care. Open a treatment room now." Dr. Harlan appeared again, surprised, and began to protest about protocol. The board chair, a quiet man who rarely raised his voice, looked directly at Marcus and said, with clear respect, "Sir, we apologize for the delay. Your son will receive the best care this hospital can offer, starting this minute." The word, "sir," landed softly but carried weight. In that moment it was more than politeness. It was recognition of a man's dignity, of the quiet strength he had shown long before anyone knew his story. Nurses moved quickly. Oxygen, fluids, tests, all the help Elijah needed arrived within minutes. Marcus stayed by the bed, holding his son's hand while the color slowly returned to the boy's cheeks. Later that night, when Elijah finally slept, the silver-haired board member sat with Marcus in a quiet corner and told him the full story of the roadside rescue. Marcus remembered that night. He had simply done what any father would hope someone might do for his own child. He had never expected it to circle back. Kindness, it turned out, had a long memory. In the days that followed, Elijah recovered. The hospital covered the costs that insurance would not. Dr. Harlan was required to attend additional training on equitable care. More importantly, the story of that night spread quietly through the staff. Nurses began noticing the patients who sat alone. Doctors started asking one extra question about family situations. Small changes, but real ones. Marcus returned to his jobs, still working hard, still raising his son with the same steady love. He never asked for attention. He simply kept living the same way he always had, choosing kindness even when the world offered coldness in return. Elijah grew stronger. He went back to school, drew more superheroes, and sometimes told classmates about the night the hospital lights seemed a little brighter because people chose to see each other as human. Marcus still carried the quiet pride of that evening, not because a board had called him "sir," but because he had stayed true to the simple belief that every child deserves care and every person deserves dignity. Kindness does not always announce itself with trumpets. Sometimes it rides in a quiet car on a stormy night. Sometimes it holds a stranger's baby in a waiting room. Sometimes it simply refuses to walk away when a father and son need help. In a country full of busy lives and heavy schedules, those small choices still matter. They travel farther than we know. They return in unexpected ways. And they remind us that the measure of a person is not found in the size of an insurance card or the color of skin, but in the willingness to treat another human being with respect. If this story stayed with you, let it move you to action in your own corner of the world. Hold the door. Offer the seat. Speak up when someone is overlooked. Call the next person, sir, or ma'am, not because of their title, but because of their humanity. The next time a child struggles or a parent feels invisible, choose the path of kindness. You never know whose life you might change, or how that change might one day circle back to lift someone you love.